I'm unmuted. Looks like I'm unmuted. So hold on and.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the September 11th live question and answer session for the Cameron Peak Fire. My name is Tom Sanchez. I'm a public information officer with Rocky Mountain Team Black, and thanks for joining us this evening. The purpose of today's informal chat is to give you a brief overview of the Cameron Peak Fire, and to also allow you to ask questions about the initial response and the current status of the Cameron Peak Fire. The way it's going to work is that we'll get an overview of fire operations from our operations section chief, John Tytron, from the Portland NEMO team. Then we'll have a question and answer session with Matt Yampa, who's the assistant fire management officer with the north zone of the Arapahoe Roosevelt National Forest and Pawnee National Grassland. Deputy Incident Commander Lance Elmore with the Southwest Incident Management Team. And John Tytron, our operations section chief with the NEMO team. We'll also have Darla Seidels on, the park superintendent with Rocky Mountain National Park, and she'll be available for questions if they come in. You can type your question in the comment section of the live feed, and we'll summarize the question and ask them of our speakers. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can in the 1 hour time limit. I'll combine some of the questions, and those questions that come in that are specific to specific areas or locations, we might have to get to those after our session. We'll note those questions and we will get back to you. So first I'm going to read a statement from the Larimer County Sheriff's Office. As you guys are aware, they've been working on assessments and it's been a long day for those guys. So unfortunately the sheriff is not here tonight, but I do have a statement. And the Larimer County Sheriff's Office is not here tonight because they're working on damage assessments and notifications today. Assessments and notifications were completed for the Poudre Canyon. All those who suffered damage or losses in the Poudre Canyon have been contacted by their fire chief. Efforts are underway to contact those with losses or damage in the Monument Gulch area. Once those impacted have all been notified, the Sheriff's Office will send out information summarizing the number of loss and damaged structures. Any questions tonight for the Sheriff's Office, we will attempt to answer, but we may not get to all of those, and we will have to refer you to the Sheriff's Office or get those questions answered after our session. So now I'll turn it over to our Operations Section Chief, John Tytron.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to go back in time a little bit for those that haven't tuned into one of these before and give you an idea of where we were at least before we had the major wind event. The fire originally started in the Rewa Wilderness out in this area of our what we are calling Division Zulu now, and it quickly spread and jumped Highway 14. We had a fairly aggressive initial attack initially, but it did escape initial attack. And since that time, it slowly spread out in this area. And this area is comprised of high elevation fir, spruce, very tight canopy, as well as moving into beetle-killed lodgepole pine. A very difficult area to fight fire in. A lot of hazards for our firefighters, just in the dead and dying timber. On top of that, the rugged terrain that we know is out here. Because of some of those reasons and the intensity of the fire based on the drought conditions, it wasn't possible to initially go direct right up against the fire's edge. So an indirect strategy, meaning we moved away from the fire to construct control lines around the fire, was initially selected, really emphasizing the north and the east side to protect values at risk in those areas. What occurred was a lot of work has gone into these lines to get them ready to go, which encompass the Dead Man Road, Manhattan Road, on down to Pingree Park Road. We had the significant weather event that occurred with 40-plus-mile-an-hour winds over a 3-day period that drove the fire off to the east, and it did eventually jump the Pingree Park Road. The rest of the fire remains within those interior lines, or interior of the lines that we've been constructing. Since that time, we've had snow, and that's actually brought us a bit of relief. It's brought us some additional challenges, but it's given us some relief from the fire standpoint. One thing I want to talk about the snow is, although it does slow the fire down, It's not currently spreading at this time, so it's locked in where it is because of the snow. What we can see in the weather forecast coming is that we're going to go right back into that warm and dry weather pattern that we had. And so although the fire isn't spreading now, there are hot spots throughout the entire 100,000 acres out there. We had the multi-mission aircraft fly over it today, and even under the snow, they're able to detect those hot spots. So knowing that and knowing that there is warm and dry weather coming, you know, we're not completely out of the woods on this. So where we're at now is we're in a slightly changed condition. So the fire has moved to an area where it's no longer in high elevation spruce fir, and in some areas it is still in some bark beetle killed lodgepole, but it's moved into some areas where we can get in and work. So we're having a little bit of a strategy shift, particularly here on the east side. We're over Pingree Park Road down here in the Monument Gulch area and the upper Buckhorn area. Right now, we'll be looking at direct attack strategies right up against the fire's edge, constructing control line all around the east side, all the way back to Rustic. So that's currently the plan. The fire is held on the 14 corridor all the way down to Knicknick. From this area at Knicknick, it's crossed Highway 14, and in this area we have a closer in line that we're finishing up, about 2 days more work. We're calling it the Kilpecker line. It goes up to the tower up here on top. And from that side, we're scouting lines down the west side of this finger to tie it off to the Laramie River Road. So we are trying to go tighter. We're actually even looking at direct attack options on this piece as well. This is an area with still some beetle killed lodgepole pine. It's a little bit more dangerous for our firefighters, so we are evaluating it. But we have some confidence that there will be some possibilities of at least a direct and a slightly indirect, and potentially doing some small burnouts to clean up those lines. But these are the emphasis areas right now, and a lot of that has to do with what's happened on the rest of the fire. So everyone knows we had the snow event. You may not know that it snowed again today on parts of the fire. We actually received 4 to 6 inches of snow out here in Long Draw. Down here in Division Whiskey, the Trail Ridge Road, they were having up to 5-foot snow drifts, I believe, blowing over that. So we've got a fair bit of snow in the higher elevations. And so that's right now a lower priority. As the snow is starting to come off these lower elevations, that's where we're going to start focusing the work in. So right now, crews are geared up to start line construction on this piece here between Rustic and Pingree Park Road tomorrow. We still have snow up here on top, and so we're waiting for that snow to come off, but given the weather forecast for tomorrow, we'll have sun, and we expect that snow to melt, and the crews will immediately be in here working on this piece of line as well. In addition to all those crews, we still do have work going on up in around Redfeather Lakes and Crystal Lakes and Glacier View. It's on some of the indirect control lines. We've had our structure groups up there finishing up structure prep work and working on fuel breaks in those areas. And those are contingency lines now as we've gotten tighter in on the Knicknick Road. We've also had a lot of resources working the Highway 14 corridor, doing mop up around the structures in there and getting that really good and secured. And today they made a lot of progress on that and feeling really good with where they're at on the heat that they've found in the 14 corridor. So I think that kind of brings us up to current and where we're at moving forward. The snow has been challenging, and I know we've had a lot of comments about getting snow plows in there and cleaning up roads and things like that. And we did have some support like that, but we're getting some melting, we're getting freezing again at night. So it's a mix of snow and ice. The roads from all the fire traffic before were really chewed up. So on top of that, you've got the mud mixed in. And so just road access has been challenging on a lot of these roads. But then snow on the fire, well, this fire isn't spreading right now, so we need to be able to find that black edge. So we need the snow to come off so we can see where the edge is. And so that's been limiting us up here. And the last piece I didn't really talk about was this stretch up here up above Comanche Reservoir in the CSU Mountain Campus. And that's another area we're actually looking at direct options as well. That's a little bit more challenging. And again, we've had some folks poking around in there doing some scouting, but we're still waiting for that snow to come off to kind of refine that plan and come up with those options. And so a lot of these areas, I talk about direct attack, a lot of it is going to be done with hand crews. There are some areas we can use dozers and other heavy equipment, particularly we think up here on this Kilpecker area, we'll be able to do that. But this section they're going to start on tomorrow is very rugged, and that'll be mostly hand crews doing that work. So I think I'll leave it at there, and we'll be ready for questions. Back to you, Don.
Thank you, John. So the first question I have, it's going to be for you, Matt. We've had a lot of questions about the initial attack stages of this fire. And the first question is, can you tell me what happened during the initial attack stages of the fire, and why wasn't the fire put out on the first day?
So it's kind of a repeat of what you've probably heard for the last, month or so. The fire behavior exhibited by the fire, even just at 20 acres when I got on scene, was pretty drastic and extreme. Much of the conditions were trees that were torching in groups. The fire was running through the canopy at 20 acres and quickly spread from 20 to 100 acres. Not to say that when we got on scene that we didn't evaluate the fire to take action on it. We had our forest helicopter show up on scene just as I was getting on scene, and they were able to give a size up, or they're able to tell our dispatch and firefighters what the conditions were from the air. And the folks in the helicopter right away identified the need for heavy air tankers, helicopters, and the such. When I showed up, I hadn't heard that transmission, but as soon as I showed up, I came up with the same conclusion and promptly ordered air tankers. We did receive 2 seats, single engine air tankers that were coming en route. And then from the Grizzly fire, there were some large air tankers with a capacity of 3,000 gallons, larger aircraft that would have been able to dump on the fire. So those were en route. As it stands, we weren't able to commit people on the ground because of the fire behavior. So in turn, I assigned those folks to evacuating campers, trails, and checking out structures up the 103 road and down Highway 14 as well, and evaluating structures. Larimer County Sheriff's Department showed up on scene and got right to evacuations and aiding us with that, and road closures. So those pieces of the puzzle were immediately put into play, and we could concentrate on the fire and accepting the air tankers when they were set to arrive. Now, sometime later, when the aircraft were en route and they got on scene, it was determined by a lead plane. Essentially, whenever you order aircraft for a fire, and multiple aircraft for a fire, you get a lead plane. And that lead plane, just as the name would suggest, leads these larger aircraft into the fire, and they run the routes that the air tankers would run towards the fire to drop their retardant. Well, the lead plane got in place, ran its line, and determined that the turbulence coming off the Cameron Peak and surrounding ridge lines was just too extreme to get these heavy air tankers and the heavy helicopter in to deliver retardant. I think their speeds were 40 knots, which is equivalent to 46, 50 mile an hour winds. So if you can imagine, I know people have asked the question, why aren't we using retardant? Why wasn't retardant used on the initial stages of the fire? It's just entirely too dangerous for an aircraft that's carrying, 20, 30,000 pounds of retardant flying at, stalling speeds, essentially landing speeds, to make a dive into a canyon as steep as the canyons are up by the pass. We've had fatalities here on the Front Range from the aircraft using that sort of, those sort of lines. So we defer judgment to the air folks and the lead plane pilot, and he called off the air tankers, and no retardant was placed on the fire. And And from that point, the fire went in the next 3 hours, I believe, went from 100 acres, made it down to Chambers Lake, jumped 103 Charlie Road, and ran to about 1,600 acres that night. So, and that's where we stood the first night.
Thank you. So the next question is going to be for operations, and it's going to be a long one, so bear with me. I'm concerned that the fire lines constructed on the Manhattan Road, the Dead Man Road, and north around Crystal Lakes are too close to those communities. When this fire heats up again and is pushed by our typical fall west winds, fire lines so close to those communities seem risky. Wouldn't it make sense to use this present opportunity to go direct on the east side of the fire, north of Poudre Canyon, to build line and set back fires when appropriate to stop the spread east and north? Will the north end receive air support or any other direct activity?
And so what you described in there is very similar to what we're doing. We do have an opportunity to go direct, not necessarily because of the snow, but because the fire is in a different location. It's in a different fuel type. The risks are a little bit less, that it makes it doable for our firefighters. That it is still risky, but we think we've been scouting it the last 2 days and we think it's doable. So the direct option is what we're going to do. As far as the Manhattan and Dead Man roads, you know, a lot of those lines were selected for a reason, and the same with Pingree Park Road. A lot of it has to do with not necessarily the proximity to the structures, but the change in fuel types as we move out that way, as well as a lot of the treatments that were done. They were selected as the highest probability of success based on what was out there. But you're absolutely right. Not that the conditions have changed. We put our effort into the highest probability of success, but we have a changed condition. So we will be moving tighter and tighter. And we had already started that with the Kilpecker line to move tighter in on the north side. And as we have the opportunity, we will continue to move tighter. As far as aircraft, we have numerous aircraft still assigned to the incident. And as we need them, we will use them. We still have the mobile retardant base. We have multiple Type 1 and Type 2 helicopters. And if needed, we'll order the air tankers as well. It's all situational. They're a tool in the toolbox. They're there to support the operations that are going on the ground. And you'll certainly probably see aircraft on the incident as we move into the next coming week or two.
Thank you. So the next question could probably be answered by all three of you, but we'll let you pick who's going to answer. So it's two parts. Please explain what a full suppression fire is and what determines when a full suppression strategy is used.
Sure. Good afternoon, Lance Elmore, Deputy IC for Team 3. You know, full suppression fire, we have a few different variations of what we do, but, you know, full suppression basically just means that the goal and objective is to put the fire out. You know, there's a lot of different strategies and tactics that go into that, as I know some of these past meetings have talked about, of direct line or indirect and some of those things. But, you know, really the full suppression is that is the objective, is to suppress the fire, you know, in a footprint that you know we can hold and suppress it at. We don't have any other objectives for the fire, as you know, some parts of the country and other fires during the right time of year, you know, we manage for resource objectives to help wildlife or other functions. But full suppression is that is really all we're focusing on, is trying to, you know, suppress the fires, you know, at a place that safely we can do so.
Thank you very much. Next question. And this is in reference to some of the technology we've been using for the fire information shop, and we're using some more accurate maps and showing heat perimeters. Within those heat perimeters, there are some spots that are showing up outside of the main perimeter. Are you guys aware of those, and what are you doing to address those?
A number of spot fires outside the main perimeter of the fire. As this fire was spreading, it was spotting throughout its spread during those days of large fire behavior, and a lot of those spots grew together. But as the snow set in, some of those last spots did not. So, particularly down in just south of Monument Gulch, there's a spot that we're well aware of that folks have looked at making access to. The spots that we can safely get into, we will be going in and constructing line around those and securing them and mopping them up. Other areas where we may have hundreds of spots over a small area, we may actually have to go construct line around all of the spot fires. So it just depends on if they're too many to detect. The other thing we'll be doing is continuing to use our IR resources. The big concern for us is that we get committed constructing fire line and there's spot fires that we don't know about, that we haven't seen or detected that could potentially cut off our firefighters. So we'll be continuing to use the infrared resources to, as we dry out and warm up, see if we can detect additional spot fires that we may have missed.
Thank you. Next question is going to be for future plans for part of the fire north of Highway 14 with expected north to northeast winds over the coming days.
Right, so we do have a little bit of wind coming in, but right now the fuels are saturated and the fire currently isn't spreading. So those winds will be of no concern here in the short term, other than the concern of falling trees with our firefighters working out there. The wind forecast following, I believe tomorrow, is going to drop us down to about 5 miles an hour for the rest of the week. So we're going to have pretty favorable winds to get in there and get some work done. Again, as I mentioned on that north side, we are looking at some direct options as well as continuing the indirect on Kilpecker.
Thank you. Next question is going to be for Matt with the Forest Service. Can you please describe actions the Forest Service has taken to do fuels reduction on lands that butt up against private lands?
Well, so that question is, there has been a lot of work done. In fact, this is probably, myself, I've worked on a number of different forests across the country, and I can honestly say this national forest and this district in particular has had a lot of fuels, hazardous fuels mitigation work done to it. That's my specialty, actually. I am a hazardous fuels and prescribed fire specialist. I mean, I could talk for hours about where the work is done and has been done, and in the past, what past firefighters have done as far as fuels goes. But to the question, essentially, we will identify anywhere that forest butts up against private property, and we will, given that the topography and the fuels are such that we can make a difference there, we will do that work, and we do it either through prescribed fire or through our timber management program, which does a lot of thinning, and they make piles that we burn in the winter. I'm sure folks are well aware of those. A new program that has come online for us specifically and for the forest is that of, we've got a lot of money from the Washington office through the Forest Service that allows us now to concentrate on more of our land that butts up against private property. And there's also a grant that helps us identify private landowners that are interested in cutting on their own property or doing this hazard fuels treatment on their own property in conjunction with the Forest Service. So there are options for us to work with the landowners on that. Again, I can't specify exact projects, but I would point you in the direction of areas around Redfeather where we have concentrated, the Manhattan Road. There's a lot of ground out there that we've done quite a bit of fuels work on, and we'll continue to do so despite the fire and whatnot. So again, it's been done extensively and will be continued to be done extensively.
Thank you, Matt. So there's been a lot of questions about preventative measures that have been taken around specific areas. And I know that you can't speak to specifics, but can you tell me if there's preventative measures that have been taken around houses to prevent it spread? One of the questions were there fire retardant drops on all of the homes or other measures taken?
So I'll take that one. There were preventative measures. You know, one of the challenges we had was the fire covered so much ground in such a short time that it did limit our ability to repurpose resources. You know, we were at preparedness level 5, and we were dealing with limited numbers of, you know, pumps and hoses and sprinkler kits and that type of supplies. But you know, all along the Highway 14 corridor, there were you know, temporary tanks of water set up, hoses deployed around structures, some sprinkler kits used. Moving up into other areas of the fire, you know, like Pingree Road, the whole road was prepped and ready for holding, lots of brush removal and tree removal and trees limbed up to get ready. Moving around in those areas. So I don't believe they had deployed sprinklers and hoses yet in those areas, as you know, that run was, gosh, 14 miles away. And that's just not the kind of fire behavior that is normal in that type of fuel type. So that wasn't deployed there, but as it was unfolding, those crews did get in there and start moving, you know, wood piles away from houses, moving propane tanks away from houses, doing work like that around the structures to get ready for the flame front. And, you know, the areas like Pingree Road and Monument Gulch and Buckhorn and those areas, you know, crews were in there, you know, dousing spot fires on decks and doing that type of work as the fire front was coming. You know, Monument Gulch was particularly challenging with the one way in, one way out, and a tremendous fire front coming. So there was that point where they had to pull back for a safety reason. As far as retardant, you know, those that are local saw the smoke coming into town. Well, that smoke was laid over all of the areas that were impacted. Zero visibility, 0 aircraft could fly in that. So during that whole push, there was no retardant used in those areas because it wasn't possible. Not to mention the wind and the aircraft wouldn't fly. And typically we wouldn't drop retardant on a structure itself. The roofs are designed to shed water, not to retain it. So we tried to hit the fuels around and adjacent to, but that wasn't an option based on the high winds and the zero visibility.
Thank you. So our next question is going to go to Rocky Mountain National Park, and bear with us while we switch over to Darla.
Oh, I am here. Can y'all hear me?
We can. We've got you, Darla. So since we have you, I am going to ask you a two-part.
Hey, Dawn, you cut out right after you said I'm going to ask you a two-part question. Dawn, I couldn't hear the question. No volume. I think I can hear you now. You've cut out, so I did not hear the question.
Okay. What, if any, tactics are not available to firefighters in Rocky Mountain National Park? Second is, what actions will crews be taking in Rocky Mountain National Park?
Okay, well, we can employ any strategy and tactic within the park that makes sense and that is consistent with our goal of reducing the risk and having the greatest probability of success. So the great thing about the park is so much of it is high elevation, and really the tundra is our best defense to use those natural features as a barrier. Obviously, not all the park is tundra, and so those areas where the fire can get down into the drainages and into those vegetated corridors are concern. But we know in some of those areas where the vegetation is the thickest, where there's a lot of beetle kill, where you've got a lot of dead, standing, and down trees, that we cannot put firefighters in there. It is a heavy, heavy risk. And we've seen the ramifications of when we put firefighters in those direct firefighting situations, and it is not a good thing. Just 2 days ago, we had 15 firefighters that had to deploy their fire shelters on a fire, and 2 of them are in critical condition. So we're constantly evaluating the risk and the potential for success everywhere we can possibly fight the fire. And can you repeat again the second part of that question?
The second question is, what actions will crews be taking in Rocky Mountain National Park?
Okay, yeah. So the crews are going up everywhere around the park boundary where the fire is, and looking at potential flare-ups once this weather system goes through and we've got drier conditions and the potential for the fire to pick up again. So they're looking at all of those areas, same as they're doing on the north end, to identify where those hot spots are and to try to put them out where that's possible to do so. We've done, over the past number of years, many fuel treatments all around Estes Park. We've done fuel treatments about 3,000 acres between the boundary of the park and Estes Park. And that certainly helps to reduce that risk of the fire going from the park into Estes Park. So some of that fuel treatment that we've done over the past 20 years or so, that involves thinning, that involves stacking, piling, and then prescribed burning to get rid of some of those hazard fuels, particularly along the highways and the areas of the greatest urban interface. So it's kind of a combination of, previous fuel treatments we've done, and then just looking for strategies that have the highest probability of success. But right now, the crews will be out there looking for those hot spots and trying to catch them when they pop up.
Thank you, Darla. Our next question is going to be for our incident commander. With fires on the West Coast and team
It's as everybody's seeing on for the fire here to have a decline in resources. Even throughout the transition with the Southwest area team and the Nemo team and the Team Black timing out and getting some rest. Really there's no change in the number of people that are on the ground on this fire. So there really is not a change in that. Really the transition with the teams is more in the management side of this, and we still have the folks that are on the ground, and they'll continue to stay here through the need or through their time and commitment that they have for here.
Thank you. And we're going to stay with you for the next question. What has to happen to see more containment on the fire?
I think to see more containment, I think of a lot of this strategies and tactics that we're now starting to employ of going direct, ensuring that those areas are safe. We don't want to go and put containment lines on when there's still a threat of that escape. We want to be pretty certain that the line that's in there is holding. We like to make sure that there's some weather that, maybe that's there with it, just to ensure that the safety of that line and folks can kind of leave that area a little bit and patrol it less. But for containment, I think going direct is one of the probably the quickest ways to put containment on the line, is because we know that line is right there next to the black, that there's no green fuels in between the fire and our line, whether it's dozer or hand line or whatever that might be. So, the tactics that have already started and that will continue is probably one of the fastest ways to up that containment.
Thank you. Next question is going to be for operations. While the fire has died down, we're hearing a lot about hotspots. Is the fire out aside from the hotspots?
Well, I guess if you have hot spots, it's not out. Yeah, the fire's not out. There's a lot of heavy fuel loading in this area, and that heavy fuel loading will be able to retain heat through the snow. As the conditions dry out, the lighter, finer fuels are going to become available. They're saturated right now, but give them 7 to 10 days of good sun and dry weather, and those fuels will become available again, and there is a potential for the fire to begin spreading again. So the good news is it's not moving at the moment. It's kind of parked where it is, but we do need to still continue the work, knowing that right now there's no relief in sight weather-wise moving into fall.
Thank you. So our next question is going to go back to the U.S. Forest Service, and I will preface this with saying that a website was already posted in the comments, but if you can explain how homeowners can get more information about how to work with the Forest Service on mitigation and fuels reduction projects.
Referencing the Firewise
Correct.
website. So yeah, there's the Firewise website, which is really, really super popular and, really hits on what is needed to be done when you live in the mountains, certainly. I would say, as far as what firefighters expect for folks to do, other than working on the vegetation around their house. I guess I've seen this question come up a number of times on social media and whatnot. Is what can a homeowner do for a firefighter? I would suggest, especially around these parts where the roads are really inaccessible or switchbacky and vegetation is growing up onto the roads, is that if you're not interested in really prepping your house, prep around your access to your house. I get this question in the field a lot from folks, and I know a lot of folks like their privacy in the mountains. That's why they go there, and they don't want to cut back their prized trees or whatnot. But and you probably have seen it in the early stages of this fire when firefighters are assessing homes to protect. I think, again, using that Firewise website gives you some great tips, but I would urge you to take a look at your access to your homes and improve those accesses, whether it's cutting the material, the vegetation back, maybe making a roundabout in your driveway so emergency vehicles can turn around, or pullouts. I think that's just another way, especially in the Northern Front Range, that will help folks, private individuals, protect their homes.
Thank you. And we'll go ahead and stay with you with the next question. Can you address the conditions of Forest Service lands on either side and along 73C near Crystal Lakes community, as this is our main evacuation road? Will any snag removal or clear cutting be done in an attempt to prevent this evacuation route from becoming non-accessible?
Okay, so 73 Charlie, 73 coming up from Redfeather north to Crystal Lakes subdivision, and then from Crystal Lakes moving east towards 67J Prairie Divide. That corridor, I know the north to south passage is primarily private land. There's just a sliver of Forest Service land, I believe, in a drainage that, if my memory is serving me correctly, doesn't have a whole lot of taller trees to impact the road there. I know once you get to Crystal Lakes and make the turn back to the east on the road, we have done an extensive job of not necessarily clear cutting, but thinning from below, thinning the trees from the shoulders of the road and on interior. And I don't know the acreage per se of what I don't remember the acreage per se, but it's pretty substantial all along the length of the road moving towards 67J. Also of note is that we completed the Redfeather North burn, which butts up on both sides of the road. So that fuels treatment has been done there as well. That was 2,000 plus acres of prescribed fire that was completed this year, 2019. So all those have been completed, and we're always looking for the public to reach out and let us know and identify areas that would be candidates for hazard tree removal. We can't be everywhere all the time, obviously, but it helps when folks get back to us and say, hey, this road, this Forest Service road, or this road is access to my property. Would you consider removing some of the hazard trees? I know we did that earlier this year on Storm Mountain up to Cedar Park and the Big Thompson, but yeah, that road up to Crystal Lakes has had treatment.
Thank you. Next question is going to go to our IC. What do computer models show for the fire, specifically for Rocky Mountain National Park, Storm Mountain, Glen Haven, and Estes? And what is, if you have percentages of spread?
I don't have the percentages of spread. Most of the models obviously has been talked about on this forum several times. This time of year is most typically your west winds. That hasn't changed. So any of the models are obviously going to take the normal weather patterns put into that with west winds, and going to show some of that spread to the east, from the fire's location. I guess the one thing I would say with that is, those models are run with no suppression activities being taken. So everything that the folks out there on the ground, with that direct construction and putting in line where those folks can get in and do it, limits that spread and those models. So, those models are built on just your, what the general weather, for the area is, with no suppression activities on those. So, as they kind of tighten those up and some of that containment line gets on there, they can run some of those models showing barriers and that type thing to help better illustrate what would still be out there.
Thank you. Next question is going to be for operations. How is the fire holding south of Highway 14?
Well, right now the fire is holding everywhere. So we're not seeing any spread on the fire at the moment. As far as the Highway 14 corridor itself, where it did come down to the road on the south side, it did hold, and we've had crews in there mopping up, and they're actually finding less and less heat each day. So conditions in there are looking really good. Now we have the piece there in the corner where the fire leaves 14 over to Pingree Park Road, And we've not seen any movement in that, but that is an area the models show potential for movement. And that is the piece that the crews are going to begin direct attack on tomorrow morning. So that is one of the first areas we're working on. But right now, no spread anywhere on the fire, and everything's holding, and 14 corridors looking really good.
Next question is going to go back to our incident commander. How does transition between teams work? You talked about there's going to be a transition. How do you ensure intelligence and plans get transferred to prevent redundant assessments?
So transitions between teams, on a team, we have multiple functions, such as operations, we have logistics that take care of feeding folks. We have, finance, and a few other functions. So for a transition, and then just take this for instance, the Southwest team was down on the south end of the fire at Estes Park for a couple of days. We came up, and our operations folks worked with the Nemo and the Team Black operations folks to kind of download all the information they had, work together to build the plans that we're looking to implement, and so that there's not redundant information, there's not redundant plans or anything else. So all those functions work together like that, and typically this is probably more of an oddity that, we've kind of had 2 days to work with these folks, yesterday and today, to do that transition and work through that. Our operations folks go out on the ground to the field and kind of shadow, and that's really what we call it, is kind of a shadow day. And typically most teams in transition is, a lot of times it is just 1 day. So we feel pretty fortunate to have had a couple days with the Nemo team and the Northern Rockies Team Black to do that. So that's really how the transitions work. And tomorrow morning, that transition of command will be turned over to the Team 3, and our folks will be in place. And for the most part, it'll be a fairly seamless transition. And like I said, the people on the ground are still going to be there. It's that management positions, such with John and operations. We have operations folks that will take over that and everything else. So.
Thank you. So the next question is going to go to operations. How do you feel the likelihood, if there is a high likelihood of the fire advancing north to the areas of Glacier View, Redfeather, and Crystal Lakes?
All of the modeling is similar to the question you asked earlier. It really does show that overall progression, the fire wants to move east. However, based on what we saw during the runs, we had a fairly good east wind, and that fire did move north. It was able to follow the fuel and the terrain to the north, and so there's certainly a risk. Probably not as strong as the east side for a wind-driven fire moving east, but it has moved far enough up north that it is concerning. It's probably one of our highest concerns on the fire. That and that far southeast corner are real high concerns for us right now. And so it's something that it's set as one of our highest priorities on the fire. That's where we're putting our efforts in to try and get some containment on that, as well as having multiple contingency lines in that area.
Thank you. And we're going to stay with you and this location that we just talked about. We've had several questions about the assessments that have been done in those same areas. With those assessments, can you talk about what that includes, and is there any work being done up there or any that's planned?
Yeah, there is some work going on up there. They're looking at fuels reduction around some of those communities. They are engaged in that. They have some heavy equipment that is supporting them, doing some of that fuels reduction work. as well as going through and assessing each individual structure, travel routes, evacuation routes, what supplies and equipment they would need should the fire move up there, and really coming up with a defense plan in those areas. And so that work's been going on. We've had 2 structured groups assigned working through those communities here over the past week. And I know they were in there today, in fact, still working on those assessments, as well as starting some of that fuels mitigation work.
All right, thank you. And that will be our last question for the day. So again, I want to mention that the sheriff could not be here tonight because of the assessments that are being done today. Any of the questions in the comment section that have to do with evacuations, closures, and assessments, we'll get back to you guys and get you the information and the contact information for the sheriff's office. So tomorrow, the Portland Nemo team and the Rocky Mountain Team Black will be transitioning the Cameron Peak Fire to the Southwest Area Incident Management Team 3. The Rocky Mountain Team Black is timing out, and the Portland Nemo team is being reassigned to the Pacific Northwest. The number of firefighters on the ground will remain the same, and the fire will be managed as one unit. Both teams would like to thank the community for their support, and we know that we'll leave you in good hands with the Southwest Area Incident Management Team. Thank you for joining us tonight.